Daniel chapter 7 verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. The Antichrist is the most infamous character in the Holy Scripture after Satan. He is the embodiment of the devil. Possessed by Satan, this outrageously wicked man will wreak unprecedented havoc in the last 7 years of this present age. Much is said about the Antichrist in the Bible. There are at least 24 chapters that talk about him and his diabolical works. Daniel chapter 7 to 11, Matthew chapter 24, Mark chapter 13, Luke chapter 21, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and Revelation chapters 6 to 20. No one interested in eschatology could afford to ignore the figure of the Antichrist. As many biblical signs begin to manifest, many end-time prophecy students are wondering when he will emerge and how to identify him when he emerges. Speculation about the identity of the Antichrist is rife in some quarters. Many names have been thrown up in the past and present, such as Caesar Nero, Henry Kissinger, Obama, Pope Francis, Klaus Schwab, and King Charles. These are wild speculations. Nero and Kissinger are dead, so they cannot be the Antichrist. I'm also certain that the rest of them do not fit the biblical description of the Antichrist. So, how can Christians identify the Antichrist? Does the Bible give any clue? Yes, it certainly does. Contrary to some uninformed opinions, the Bible is not against Christians seeking to know the identity of the Antichrist and the timing of his emergence, because God reveals these things in it. The scripture even fuels speculations when it discloses that the number of the name of the Antichrist is 666. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Unfortunately, the speculations are mostly wildly off the mark because they ignore God's explicit revelation in His Word. I can confidently say that no one knows the identity of the Antichrist presently because the circumstances and timing that unmask him are not yet in place. First, let us consider the circumstances that will help people to identify the Antichrist when he emerges in the world scene. These are distinct political events, and there are 2 such events according to God's revelations in the Bible. The prophet Daniel spoke of the first event. I considered the horns, and behold, there came among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. To put this prophecy in its context, Daniel was speaking about a political power struggle in the last world empire, which is more popularly known as the one world government. This one world government will comprise 10 nations with 10 kings or 10 strong political figures at the helm. A power struggle ensues out of nowhere. A little-known politician will emerge to topple 3 of the kings. This is symbolized by the little horn plucking out the other 3 horns by the roots. This little horn is the Antichrist. Most prophecy scholars fail to notice the meaning and significance of the little horn. The description means that the Antichrist was not a prominent political figure before he burst onto the global stage. He is little known and inconspicuous. But through a series of astute political maneuvers, he manages to dethrone three extremely powerful incumbent political figures. This fact about the Antichrist is repeated in the same chapter in the book of Daniel with greater clarity. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. Here is another important point to take note of. The one world government will rise in Europe, where the ancient Roman Empire dominated in the past. It is often called the revived Roman Empire. Currently, the regional entity, the European Union, exercises political and economic control over 27 European countries. A future development will result in 10 of these nations rising to dominate the region. Until then, it is premature to identify who the little horn may be. The Antichrist will rise from obscurity only after the 10 nations with the 10 kings come into the geopolitical scene in Europe. Daniel also spoke about another event that will unveil the identity of the Antichrist. The revelation is contained in a well-known 70-week prophecy. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. In the context of the prophecy, he refers to the Antichrist. The Antichrist will forge a peace covenant between Israel and her enemies for 1 prophetic week, which is the equivalent of 7 years. The Antichrist will accomplish what many US presidents and world politicians are unable to do in bringing peace to the Middle East. This highly significant event will serve to confirm the identity of the Antichrist. So, we cannot know who the Antichrist is until the occurrence of these 2 events: the emergence of the little horn and the signing of a comprehensive peace treaty between Israel and her enemies. Any attempt to identify the Antichrist now is pure speculation. When will these 2 events happen? For the first event, I believe that it is going to happen in the near future. Many global elites, national governments, intelligence agencies, think tanks, and world bodies have been talking openly about the need for a global government since more than a decade ago. They argue that the world is facing so many complex problems and insurmountable crises on different fronts. Unless there is a global government vested with the necessary power and authority to tackle these problems, the world will implode. Since the COVID-19 crisis, the world has been rapidly moving in this direction. The global elites and institutions are taking advantage of the fear of the virus to institute a global digital surveillance and control system through the implementation of vaccine passports, health tyranny, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and the climate change agenda. Never waste a crisis. This mantra from Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum founder and chairman, is often echoed by many prominent and influential globalists. There are many geopolitical and economic events to watch out for, but watch out especially for 10 nations to emerge from the European Union. When that happens, it will not be long before we see the emergence of the little horn, the Antichrist. For the second event, regarding the signing of the Middle East Peace Treaty, Daniel's 70-week prophecy put it at the start of the 7-year tribulation. We read the verse earlier, "And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week." 1 prophetic week is the equivalent of 7 years. This momentous event will mark the beginning of the tribulation. Given that Christians will not get to witness this event that confirms the identity of the Antichrist. Why? Because the church would have already been raptured before the tribulation begins. From the eschatological sequence of events, I believe that the formation of the one world government will precede the emergence of the Antichrist. It is obvious from Daniel's vision of the 10 horns and the little horn. The little horn representing the Antichrist will emerge only after the 10 horns have appeared. Therefore, it is likely that we will get to see the formation of the one world government and the initial rise of the Antichrist, unless there is a long time gap between the rapture and the start of the tribulation. However, we will not be around to witness the Antichrist brokering the Middle East Peace Treaty, which is the event that confirms his identity. I'm fine with that. I do not plan to be around the earth during the tribulation. I'm looking forward to the rapture.